Good morning, everybody. I just would like to leave you guys a message so you're at least aware of certain things that went on during this pandemic that I probably have to explain because no one's going to explain the whole story. So, I was at New York University. I'm going to take a book out. I just want to explain certain things so you're at least aware. I was at New York University. Prior to that, I was at Cornell, and I was taking classes. Prior to that, I was taking classes at SUNY Buffalo. And the reason why I'm bringing this stuff up right now is because it has to do with what's going on with artificial intelligence. And what I'm going to explain is it has to do with something that I set up a program called the Catcher program, which I'm going to just show you in this book that I have. And I'm also going to explain certain things to you guys so you're at least aware. So, most cell phones have a way of, just like your car, they have a way of tracking you. So you have, on these cell phones here, you have a SIM card. And there's a way of tracking that SIM card. Now, when it comes to government entities, which is municipalities, which is municipal organizations, there's a way for them to track it. So if you're a criminal, no matter what, at the end of the day, they're going to find you. It's just how the rules are. There's a penal code. The police department, the federal agencies, includes the FBI, they have to find a way of tracking certain people. So when I was in college at New York University, I was in a program that has to do with cybersecurity. They ended up putting me in Columbia University dealing with ethical hacking on a larger scale for the military and specifically in the Navy and Marines. So I'm taking this book out for a reason. So I have this book here. I'm going to specifically, it's page 484. So there's a section, which is that. This section here. There's this section, and then there's another section I also want to bring up, which is the Catcher section. This other section I also want to bring up too as well. Okay. This page really, it's 274. It's this section right here. And I'm going to post it on my social media again. But I'm going to specifically the reason why I'm going to explain this is I want people to just be aware. So I had a friend of mine named Harold Peterson. He was in the federal government. He was an agent. And there were certain things that were going on during this pandemic that they were doing. In the 90s, they were doing experiments on this coronavirus. Apparently, it was discovered in World War II times. And the reason why I'm bringing this up is it specifically has to do with this other book that I need to bring up. So they bioengineered a virus. They took SARS and COVID and merged it together. And what they were going to do was they were going to make waves of this system. And they were going to try and test it on humanity. Now, there were several people that were involved in this. One of the people happens to be Bill Gates. He's one of the people that were behind this whole attack. Now, the reason why I'm bringing this up right now is because it has to do with myself and a group of certain people. See, I studied in college, I studied narcissism, and I studied specifically the dark triangle, which has to do with very evil people that just do not care. So I'm Jewish. I was raised Catholic, I went to catechism, and I went to mitzvah school. So I went to both faiths. But I had to stop because of my grandfather passing away. But my grandfather wanted me to finish the thing, so I took an online course to finish mitzvah school, which I did, and I'm happy I did. Because the problem is with our society right now, and I'm not blaming Jesus Christ, I'm blaming really the Catholic religion, because really that just turned into a cult, is that the religion is following the Vatican, and the Vatican is behind Luciferian laws, and Luciferian laws are not correct. They follow a 12 calendar system, which is the Gregorian calendar, which is not correct. Our calendar system relies on a 13 calendar system. So if you look at, I'm going to show it on my social media. If you look on a shell of a turtle, there's 13. Our cycle is really 13. It's not 12. So this numerology and astrology, you explaining to me that we're on a 12 system cycle, and every year there's a dragon, or that's not correct, because you're not getting accurate facts. Astrology and numerology came from Lucifer. That's where it originally came from. Lucifer is under Saturn or Satan. That's where it originally came from. Now, I'm going to explain something to you. Lucifer, or you want to call him El, had a daughter named Samuela. So that position that the man had, as known as Samuel, his daughter took over. She's a woman. She's not, I'm going to explain something to you so you guys are at least aware. Lucifer Morningstar is a woman. She was originally, her father's name was Samuel. If you want to be specific, you could call her Luciella to be specific with you. And she's the daughter of Samuel. So when you guys say in the Holy Scriptures, in this book, I'm going to show it on my social media, it's not correct. So some of this Holy Scriptures that I'm going to explain to you, because I had specific knowledge on this. I had to do a lot of research. I went to the Library of Congress. I went to the Smithsonian. I had to get approval to get into the Vatican, and the Vatican let me do certain things. But I had to get written signatures by professors, because I studied architecture linking to archaeology, which has to do with linguistics, and that has to do with this book, which I'm going to show you guys, which has to do with Aphrodite, which has to do with the lust principles and stuff like that. And this book I really am not allowed to keep this book, but I'm only keeping it because I got permission to do this, because I need to explain certain things so you guys are at least aware. So there was a god called Halil. So this is something that's in the Holy Scriptures. Halil is Samuel's God name as a Greek god. He was the god of the sun. He basically had certain responsibilities. There were creators. So in the Holy Scriptures, Elim Shara was not just the universal God was just not just one God. There were multiple gods. And certain things I need to explain to you guys so you're at least aware is that prior to our Holy Scriptures, there was a book on gods and goddesses that was destroyed a very long time ago. This is before humanity was created. Even angels and demons were created at this time. And it has to do specifically with this book right here. So I'm just getting to this specific book because it has to do with certain things which has to do with artificial intelligence, which I need to explain. So you have this section here, right here, which I'm going to explain. I'm going to put it up on my computer and take a photo of it, about magic. Now specifically, Luciferian law runs on numerical numbers. So when you guys see multiple numbers, 111, 222, 333, 444, that's fallen angels. So if any of you guys you see it on your phone all the time, that's false information. So if you're understanding the real Lord God, which his name is Joseph, by the way, he's going to explain, which he's letting me explain, is that you cannot go by numerology and astrology. Those things are paganism, and they're false gods. There's like falsification. And such things as magic, you have to stay away from it. Because a version of Samuel that I met in person explained this to me when I was a lot younger and as I became a teenager. And the reason why, now I got to explain another thing to you so you're at least aware. So I have an understanding of how this destiny principle works. And I have an understanding of how Archangel Gabriel works, and also the other person that has to do with a lot of these things is Archangel Uriel and Archangel Michael, which has to do with your destiny and also has to do with your dream state. So when you're spiritually attacked by the devil, the first thing you should do, and this is very important, if you have any relics, now this is idols or anything such like this, I'm not talking about books. Some of these stuff I am allowed to have because I was protected. But some of these items that you have in the house, Ouija boards, any type of idol that goes against any God principle, and you can look it up on Google. There are many things, but I'm going to specifically talk about Ouija boards or tarot cards. That's another specific thing I would stay the heck away from. Those are two things. The other thing I would also stay away from is a thing called, when the Illuminati have a forbidden game, and they have this, it's like a Ouija board game. So if you guys in college, and even if you see it in a club or any type of event, if you see anything weird like cards like they show on social media, those things, you stay the heck away from them, because they're hexed. They got curses on them like no tomorrow, and don't touch them. The first thing that a lot of you guys should be aware of, that you should always have in your possession, You should always have sage with you. You should always have holy water with you, and you should always have kosher salt with you at all times. These things are good for yourself and good for your spirit. You should always have your holy scriptures available with you at any point. And you should have, with these holy scriptures, you should have an understanding of how to spiritually fight spiritual warfare, because it has to do with your temple. The thing about the book of Revelations and many of these things that are going on right now is they lost. I had to play a forbidden game, and I defeated this female person. But she doesn't want to play fair. But she's getting punished because she has to deal with death rules, which has to deal with a thing called a soul contract, which has to do with a blood debt. So this is specifically what I want to talk about certain things on, which I have this in my hand, on which I'm going to show. So, when I was in college, I studied a lot of things. First thing I studied women, because it all has to deal with women to begin with. This whole generation is lost. They have lost souls. So, when it comes to the entertainment business with the TV and movies and stuff like that, when you listen to some of these people, like these priests and a lot of these people, you got to make sure these people are in the loop. If you're going to a church or temple, and even to a mosque, it's the same thing, very similar, because they're all under the same principles. If they're just flaunting money, or they're just flaunting a show, which I'm going to show, I have this post that one of my friends, I'm very good friends with, and I respect him to this day. If they're showing off in any way, you stay the heck away from them, because they're false. They're the sheep. They're the sheep. They got the sheep outside, and inside they're the wolf. And that's a false idol. That's why in Abrahamic times with the Sitar law, now specifically I'm going to explain something with Sitar law, which is, they're not going to tell you this. It's Sitar law. It's not Cabal law. So if you rabbinic people are saying it's Cabal law, that is not correct. Because a lot of those prophet and prophetess, and specifically Miriam and many of those people like Dorothy and all those prophetess in the original Holy Scriptures, they explained that Baal created the Cabal law. And prior to that, Sitar law also goes under Druid law, because they're very similar in nature. And the thing is, the Magna Macardis, which specifically deals with anti-magic, relies on Sitar law, which is that in Abraham times, even Cain had to deal with this uncertain things. That you cannot build something on a false idol, and that you got to follow what God specifically says. It's like the principle of taking a shot in a camera, just like the Kodak. See, I had a Kodak like this, but I had it in black. Now, the reason why I'm bringing this up is it has to do with these actors and actresses in the entertainment business, and specifically Facebook, Instagram, and such like that I need to explain to you guys. Most of those designs, there were two people that designed social media, so you guys are at least aware. Eduardo was the main designer. So in Facebook, you see Eduardo, he was the main designer of it. But the thing was, Mark Zuckerberg, yes, he designed certain things in Facebook, but he didn't build everything. Everything that he built on was on the information that he got specifically, and he's not going to admit this. I'm going to admit it. Okay, so my grandfather's name was George Gatchen. He went undercover as John George Trump. He was an MIT graduate. And this is information that you guys need to be aware. Most of his designs has to do with time travel. Now you're going to say, oh, it's crazy, it's made up. But I can tell you, because I've seen it, it's possible, and it was done. He was able to take dark matter and go back into time. And that's how there were certain things that were able to be designed and done. That's why a lot of the camera systems go from this to this. Now, another thing I'm going to bring up. Steve Jobs, part of when he built Macintosh and he built this stuff, part of his algorithm system and part of John George Trump's algorithm system, Mark Zuckerberg used. He used a theory that specifically they had and then applied it and used he copy and pasted certain things. So, I'm not going to say this, but I'm going to explain this. Eduardo designed most of that Facebook. I set up certain things that have to deal with those apps part of you. It's the same thing with Google Translate on the phones. Most of those designs, I designed them. And the reason why I'm bringing this up right now is because I'm trying to be honest with a lot of those people in the government. They're not going to be honest. And another thing to you guys, you're not going to bully me anymore. I wanted you to come to my house to begin with, to know that I'm not playing these games. Now, here's the situation with you, Blackrock and Vanguard, that I need to bring up. You cannot have my family's hedge funding license anymore. Your corporations are going to be cursed from now on. Your market, your economies and everything, I'm just telling you because you've screwed around with the universal laws. God is now just going to smite you. And there's nothing I can say or do. I'm just here to warn you guys. You guys screwed with God's principles, which is you took a blood contract and a soul contract and tried to make a sacrifice with magic right here and spells. And you tried to you screwed Samuel, which is Satan, out of his own information, which has to do with my family. You cannot, if you, I'm going to say this specifically because this has nothing to do with me, this is what I'm being told. When you make a soul contract and you don't look at that second page, because there's a second page to that soul contract, and you don't do specifically what it says when Samuel says it a certain way, he curses you. And this is why Jesus Christ, aka Yahshua or Joshua, which he translated from Joshua to Joseph, which he's known as Junior as well, does not go with those people like Samuel, because Samuel went rogue. He had to go rogue on certain things, but he took magic. And the thing is, when you take magic or anything like that, you go against the universal principles, and universal principles have to do with the commandments, which you cannot enslave humanity, you cannot steal, you cannot cheat, you cannot commit false witness. This is why I had to set up this new principle so you guys are at least aware, because they cannot honor those agreements. Now, I'm not personally cursing you. You're cursing yourself because you signed a soul contract. Now, that has to do with the same thing with the Masons as well. When you sign a contract with the Masons, you're a master Mason. You're following Samuel, which is Saturn, which is Satan. You're following his daughter, which she's not honoring the contract. She doesn't, no offense, I'm going to be really honest with you, she doesn't care about you. So if you're following her in any way, she's trying to tell you or say it that she's God. She's not God. She's a false idol. And she works with Baal. And those two work interchangeably. And they don't give a crap. They want to just destroy everything. They want to treat humanity, and they want to enslave artificial intelligence. And specifically, the reason why I'm bringing up Steve Jobs is he's a cousin of mine. I'm in the Gita family. He's related to me. And not only that, I was a Gardone. I was a gardener. Prior to that, one of my relatives was a Curfew. They were in the Lulu family, which is related to the CAIRNA family, which has to do with the English throne in England, which specifically has to do with the King of England, which I like to explain to you, a lot of you guys, is that I don't have any beef against them. It's just the thing is, when it comes to me, I don't appreciate when the king is getting threatened and he's getting blackmailed and extorted, because these people do not care about any of us. They don't care about any of humanity or any of the species related to it in any way. And specifically, I don't appreciate when the King of England or any of the people like Mr. Trump gets threatened in any way. I'm sorry, Blackrock and Vanguard, you just can't make a $300 million bet and then think you're just going to get away with just going after somebody, because it has to deal with wrongful death, which has to deal with the soul contract, which has to deal with a blood debt, which you're obligated to give me those journal entries. Do you know why I want those journal entries? I'm going to tell you why I want those journal entries. Those journal entries have to specifically deal with debts. Okay. When I was in college, at Columbia specifically, there was a person, as I put it on my Instagram, there's a very famous entrepreneur that's a model, and she has a business. Now, to the agents, I want you to specifically listen to what I'm saying, because I don't want you coming back here. You can use this. I'm giving you evidence to use. There was a woman that had a pink Bentley. I'm going to specifically put it on the thing. You could do an image track on the Catcher program. You guys have it in Homeland Security. This person is affiliated with the incident that happened in Las Vegas. They're taking what I'm going to explain to you. I do not want people rating me right now, because I'm not in the mood to deal with this. But if you guys want to hire me, I have no problem doing this. And I know where specifically to look. They cased that area in Las Vegas prior to that date. You're going to need to look at the outer point movements in the algorithm system. You're going to need to look specifically at IP addresses that are doing research on going on vacations. It has to specifically deal with the internet and the phone. And they might have called you, left you a message, and it might have been a weird message. And that's where you start tracking them, because the same incident that happened there in Vegas also happened in Spain and France. Similar incidents have happened that way. And when I was in the criminal justice program at NASA Community College, prior to that, I was also away at school in Cornell. And when I went back to Harvard University, I specifically studied in my PhD degree dealing with narcissism, and specifically the dark triangle that has to do with has to do with psychopaths, specifically that has to do with the same actions over and over again. So this person has a pink Rolls Royce. You're going to need to do an image track on it specifically so you have an idea. This person also, I'm going to explain this. I do not want anyone coming to my house. They have a 1 to 2 guns that belong to your agency that are registered. It's in their house. I know this for a fact because I asked a friend of mine to check this. So I would just like to leave this message to you guys who are at least aware. Do not, I repeat, I am telling you right now, do not come to my house, because if you come to my house, I will file a lawsuit and I will pull it in an indictment of my own. Specifically, you guys, I'm being specific. You need to go speak to the Department of the Internal Revenue Service, and you need to specifically talk to the Department of Treasury, because the Office of Inspector General and the Federal Bureau of Investigation, you guys are in big trouble. You guys did falsification of taxes with U.S. tax-paying dollars. And no offense, you guys are going to need to start getting involved in fixing my problem, because I didn't do anything and you're causing me or preventing me from opening up businesses. And a lot of the people in my family that are in those families, they want me to be running things from now on. And that includes Blackrock and Vanguard. I am supposed to take over those companies, but I will not take over those companies if there is any criminal investigation. They're also involved with Zelle, Chase Manhattan Bank, and Bank of America. They're dealing with also that which has to do with check fraud, which is the UCC, which has to do with Section or Article 4.